kick it.
Hello, all of you slimesters, and welcome
Hello,
to...
people.
Hello, people.
It's gotta get. It's so old so quickly. I've only done it 3 times, and I'm tired of it.
Welcome to our first conversation with episode of the season. And I know I say I get excited every single time we have guests on, but I do. I get genuinely excited because I love these conversations. And we have with us Rich Berry. How you doing, Rich?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thanks for being here.
I've had the great honor to have interviewed Rich before we started the podcast, whenever I was just doing Instagram lives, and we had a really fun conversation then. So there'll probably be a lot of overlap from that conversation into this one. But for those of you who are into 90s Nickelodeon, you've seen Rich's work. You just don't know you've seen Rich's work.
Everywhere.
That's fair.
Wow.
Because you've had Rich's. I don't want to give it away just yet, but he's done something that most people completely overlook. Like, it's one of those things that everyone loves, but you don't think about who made this, because everyone knows game show hosts and the actors and voice actors. So, but he's played a very integral part with Nickelodeon. But first, how did you get into working for Nickelodeon?
I graduated college in the middle of '89, I guess it was, good old Quinnipiac University up in Connecticut, and worked for Howard Stern for about 6 months, first as an intern and then the assistant to the assistant promotions director. And my cousin called me, who was currently working at Nick, and said, "There's an opening at Nickelodeon. You may want to apply." So I somehow made the jump from Howard Stern to Nickelodeon in about 6 weeks, which is not the normal job progression, I imagine.
Is it easy to quit?
Yeah, well, it didn't seem like Howard was going anywhere at that point, but I guess I must have been wrong about that one.
I'm staying here, Robin.
Yeah, exactly.
HR must have been a little different between both places,
A little,
huh?
yes, quite a bit. And I started off as a production clerk at Nickelodeon in New York at 1775 Broadway, basically Columbus Circle area, when it was still, at that point, kind of a fledgling network. I think I started January 3rd, 1990.
Wow.
That was right before it hit big. That was right when it hit big. Like, that was right around the Nicktoons.
Nicktoons was just getting started.
Yeah.
And in fact, at that point, Comedy Central was another network. It was currently called
Yeah.
And then became Comedy Central later. So yeah, I was there for a lot of the beginnings of stuff. I remember Chris Gifford running around the halls a lot, who eventually became the, producer of Clarissa. But Chris Gifford, if you don't know, was also on Great Space Coaster and all those other crazy shows back in the day.
And him and Mark Weiner have a friendship, and they work together on Dora. It's crazy.
Yes. Chris's big success was Dora, which I think he just basically retired on all of his Dora money. So good for him. Yeah.
Now, what was the job? What did that entail whenever you first started?
Production management of the on-air promos team. So basically, I was a production clerk. I would set up shoots. I would hire crews. I would pay bills, coordinate schedules. We would do shoots for Nickelodeon. We would do shoots for Nick at Night occasionally. And so I was kind of the promo guy for production. I was the production management guy for promos. So at that time, you guys are going to know this very well, Pete and Pete was shorts. It wasn't a show yet. And so I was the production manager on a lot of Pete and Pete shorts, the early ones before they became bigger shows. And in fact, I ended up moving on to be one of the production managers on the first Pete and Pete episode that was shot in Bayonne, New Jersey. Oh,
now we got my guy. Here's my guy jumping in right now. It's April by now, so he's no longer frozen.
I've warmed
up.
What's up, Jordy?
How's it going, everyone? Sorry, Zoom decided to update the second I...
we were just talking about that.
Yes.
There you go.
Well, I think they would time it so you could select update after meeting, but no.
Right.
You came just in time. We were talking about the Pete and Pete shorts.
There you go.
Oh man, the Pete
Yeah,
and Pete shorts.
yeah. Rich had worked on the Pete and Pete shorts before it became big.
Oh really? Oh my gosh, man, those are special place in my heart.
I've got some great pics with me and Danny and everybody on the set, and I worked with Chris Viscardi and Will McRobb, who were the creators at that
Hmm.
time. And we did a lot of stuff around South Orange, New Jersey, and Bayonne, and I was there for a lot of the very early pieces.
Oh wow, man. Yeah, the down to the noises of the cicadas in the summertime and everything. I love how those are made.
And at
Absolutely.
that point, I was a huge fan of Artie, the strongest man in the world. So that was,
Yes.
to me, it
Yes.
was like, regardless of the costume he wore at times, which was interesting. But he was like my favorite. He was sort of the powder toast man before powder toast.
Oh
Yes.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
so whenever I tell all of you, you've seen his work, but you don't realize it,
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. And
yeah,
you had also mentioned that you worked on a lot of the promos.
correct. I left Nick, New York in end of 91, moved to Nick Studios, Florida. I picked up my life and moved to Orlando. Just when I guess, gosh, they were in the middle of a season of Double Dare when I got there. And I was at Nick Studios from the beginning of 92 all the way to the end of 95.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and so, and anything that was shot at Nick Studios at that point, I was kind of the promo guy for. So I
Oh,
wrote and directed every Clarissa Explains It All promo. I worked on Welcome Freshman, Guts, Global Guts, Legends. All of those promos were things that I was working on when I was
Please
young.
say Wienerville.
Oh
That
yeah,
show
sure.
too.
It's
There you go,
Awesome.
Manny.
That's awesome. It's my favorite show. I
Wienerville.
love it.
I wish
Oh,
I could say I did the promos on that. They sent a New York team down to do that because
Oh,
Mm.
it
ah,
was
damn.
special. But I saw Mark every day. We were on set all the time, so it was
That's
great.
cool.
it's
Yeah.
awesome.
So,
So
yes, if you, like I said, all of you have been, like us, are very nostalgic for those promos, and you can find a whole collection of them all over YouTube.
it's amazing.
And he was in charge of all of that, and that's super awesome. It
Yeah.
was actually through Facebook where I think we first met each other
I think you're right. Yep.
because I was sharing those promos at the time, and Rich would say, "Oh my gosh, I remember making this," and I was like,
That's
"Wait,
right.
what?"
That's right. I would find things that I hadn't seen in 20 years. Yeah.
So that was so cool. What
Yeah.
was it? What was the recording schedule like for shooting those promos? Because if I remember right, you had to catch them after they recorded an episode or something to that degree.
Basically, yeah, I would wait, generally, like for an example, Clarissa, I would wait around on a Thursday afternoon around 5 o'clock, and generally that when they was getting ready to wrap up their shooting, depending upon whether they were going to be on set or off on location or something like that. And I would get that sort of like walkie-talkie call at 5:30, and I'd fly down the stairs from the third floor onto stage 18 with my little stopwatch and my script, and Melissa would look over at me and go, promos, right? And I'd go, yeah, promos. And then, everybody else would jump in, Sean or whoever had to be in the spot, and I would explain the spot to them. We'd shoot it a couple times, and then hopefully I'd be out of there in 15 minutes, which is exactly what they wanted me to do. And it had to be 12 seconds long, so I had to leave 3 seconds for the end page. So that was pretty simple, you know.
I didn't know they took place like after an actual episode. I figured that would be something opposite. Wow.
We tried to get them weekly when the episodes were shot, just to tie into if there was any sort of extra
Mm.
set piece they were doing or something that would tie into the episode. Like I would
Right.
the scripts, and then I would think, all right, how do I write this, and what do I talk about, and what's the key factor that I really want to promote to the audience. And so if they were doing something where there was a special build or a swing set, I'd be like, oh, let's go over and shoot it on the pyramid set or whatever they were doing.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how we did it. It was fun.
That's awesome. Did you ever get any like I'm assuming like notes from the showrunners on like, hey, this is what we kind of want the promo to be like for special episodes?
Yes, and I'm sure that, well, I don't know if I am sure about this, but there has always been this classic back and forth between show producers and what they think the episode is about, and promo producers who know what's the promotable part of the episode. That is a long-standing back and forth, and honestly, I've read notes from, 100 show producers over the years where it's like, I know that's what you want me to talk about, but this is what we really need to talk about.
This is what they
Um,
want to know.
Yeah.
yeah, and so I think
Character
that's an
growth
ongoing
versus
pattern.
tagline.
Yeah,
And it's hard to condense that to 12 seconds too. Like, wow.
it
That's a
is.
talent right there.
Yeah, Doug Sepler was one of the writers. There's a bunch of different people who were writing on the show, and Chris was always very good with us to work us in. But at the end of the day, it was Melissa that had to really, after shooting 2.5 days on an episode, would have to look at me and be like, "Okay, what are we doing now?" Um, but she was good about it, you know.
That's good.
Yeah, I still hear from a lot of those folks, Jason and Sean and all those guys. It's pretty nice.
Oh, still, that's
That's
great.
Oh
cool.
yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yep.
Is there? I don't want to say play favorites, so let's not do the play favorites. But I
Okay.
will say, was there anyone that you just found yourself either easier to work with than others, or ones that you were just looking forward to working with?
I mean, honestly, Phil Moore was probably my favorite person to work with on camera because he gave you 110%, whether you asked for it or not. And
I can
he
see
was
that. Yep.
Yeah.
just beyond energy. And to this day, I know I swear he's got to be older than me, but he is still beyond energy. I don't
Yes,
really
he is.
Yes,
understand.
he
Yes.
is.
Yes.
And he's terrific. And he hosted Slime Time. Like we started Slime Time back in, I guess, 91 or 2, the early version before the version
Mhm.
everybody thinks of in the 2000s, and where we would call kids on AT&T video phones before we had the internet and everything. And it was pretty great. Like we would do a lot of stuff with Phil, and Mike O'Malley hosted one year, and so I'd say Phil was probably my favorite because if you wanted 30 takes, he'd give you 35. That's fine. You know, he was great.
Did you also do some of the Snick promos with the big orange couch?
Yes, I did. Yes,
Oh
I did.
man.
I was a PA on the original shoot, which was the couch traveling all over on a truck and
Yes.
fast motion and the lights and everything. I was kind of a PA on that shoot. And then I ended up being the producer. They gave me this Nick campaign. I think it was 96 maybe when we did the electricity snick through the
Yes.
Yeah.
city, and that was actually part of that was shot at Nick Studio or in Universal Orlando. We shot all the buildings in Universal, but that was also part of that was done in New York. The model of the city was shot in New York with a slow motion camera. So yeah.
The same thing too with that later one where it was the couch and then that room that would decorate itself and undecorate.
I was done at that point. I had moved
Oh,
on to a different role at that point. But yes, I
gotcha.
mean, Nick was a huge part of my life forever. I remember standing with Herb Scannell, who at that time was the president, or maybe he was head of programming at that point, watching the Ren and Stimpy episode where things had not been fully vetted through standards, and some things aired that they probably were hoping were not going to air.
Wow.
There were early Ren and Stimpies that really didn't get checked fully before they hit the air.
Mhm.
They didn't get checked, really?
Yeah, there was stuff in there that they had to change after the first airing. Yeah.
No, they
Oh
had
yeah.
man.
John had a particular sense of humor. Yeah.
Oh, he sure did.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's
So
so
anyway.
cool.
That's
It was
amazing.
great. I mean, the energy at Nick Studios was unbelievable. I was just down there a few weeks ago. We did the whole Slime Time Live 25th anniversary reunion thing.
Yeah.
It was great. And the building's still there. We went in to tour it because it's obviously changed quite a bit over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
It's
I will
blue.
tell you, the smell is still the same. It still smells the same inside. If that means anything.
Hey.
Wow.
Does it smell
Great.
like expired milk product from the
Yes,
set of
it
Double
does.
Dare?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Oh look, Jordy's so upset. He
Oh,
was like, I
no.
changed it, so he left.
Oh,
Or the update
I
didn't
get it.
take.
The true fan. I get it.
He'll be back.
It's really kind of cool how they still kept the bathroom, still have the
Yes.
slime
The
in
Yeah,
tile,
the
there.
yeah.
tile.
So,
Yeah.
The
That's
only
cool.
place. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so a question that we get asked a lot,
Okay.
just as a podcast, because every season we do a ask us anything sort of thing,
Sure.
And we always get asked, did you guys ever get to go to Nickelodeon Studios? And then also, whenever I was doing the interviews live with you and others, one of the questions was always, what was it like filming at Nickelodeon Studios? Um, you have the very, very unique perspective of knowing what it was like back then and then getting to tour it again now.
Yeah.
What was it like going through it again after all these years?
I mean, it's, it brings back a lot of memories, and oddly enough, they haven't changed that much in terms of the interior. Obviously things have been painted over. That happened a couple of years ago, and they got painted over the second floor, and that was a big bummer because that was an amazing amount of artwork that went into
Yeah.
that. Um, and I know fans have posted videos seeing it, on YouTube and things like that. But just to go in there and walk down that hallway towards the world's slowest elevator, by the way, if anybody ever asks you, it's the world's slowest elevator in that building. Um, it's just nostalgia all over the place. I mean, 18 and 19 were places that I ran back and forth from every day for 4 years. I would run from Clarissa to Welcome Freshman, and I would run from, Guts to Double Dare, and it was just crazy, and it was all happening live. And at the time, had we known how important it would be, but when you're in the middle of it, you're just sort of living that life, so you don't really think about it that much.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
could probably answer this question for me. This is sort of something I've fussed with over the years. Was Guts and Legends all filmed in the same stage because
No.
of the pool? Really? Okay. I didn't know that.
So Legends was on 18, which was one of our, if you consider it, there's the core building and then there's two studios on either side. So it was 18 and 19 were the Nick Studio stages.
Hmm.
Guts was done on, I think they're calling it 21, whatever the studio was, directly across from Nick Studio. So it wasn't actually in Nick Studios. It was
Oh,
in the
Hmm.
studio, Universal soundstage right next door.
wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So just a standard soundstage that they would rent to any other show, and that's where Guts was done, and eventually where Global Guts was done. And I think maybe that was done maybe because it was slightly larger. I don't know what the decision was, but I know at that point we did have three shows going at once, so they had to have a production truck come in because both control rooms were already in use on the other two shows in production.
That's
So,
I
incredible.
seem
but
to recall in the
Mm.
Slimed book, they had said that they had to get a big studio
yeah,
for Guts because of how massive that set was,
the
especially
crowd.
Aggro Crag.
Oh yeah.
I had now that you mention it. Kat, did you have something?
Yeah. A little bit of a pivot, but I see that in addition to promos, eventually you were named CSO, Chief Slime Officer.
That is correct.
What is the job description for Chief Slime Officer? What were your duties?
It was never written anywhere. I
That's a
don't know
shame.
that. Yeah, I never got a document on it, but
Oh,
my duties at that time, which were a bit later, interestingly enough, like way after slime time, was that I had to check any slime being used for any on-air purpose. So, Kids' Choice slime, I would go check color, consistency,
your
viscosity.
Really?
quality
Oh yeah,
control.
oh yeah, quality control, absolutely.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So
Wow.
any promo we did or anything we would do with a commercial partner, I'd have to go out and check it, and I would get called to go places, at 3 in the afternoon to go look at slime, and I'd have to put my hand in and hold it up and check the light and look at the viscosity and all that stuff. So yeah,
Slime
So
connoisseur.
you'd be
All
talking to
right.
a celebrity to be like, "Brr, brr, oh, I gotta go check slime. Thank you, David. Thank you, Steven Spielberg. I'll be right back. I gotta go check slime.
they should have given me
That's
a green phone or something. It would have been great.
that's
But
great.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, I really do think, and I don't know if everybody knows all the, everyone's heard about what's in slime, but we had a
Mhm.
mix at Slime Time that we developed in Orlando from the 2000 to 2003 era, where I think it was the most perfect slime ever done. And when I slimed Seema Zargami's kids, that Seema was the president of Nickelodeon, she like looked over at me and she was like, perfect. And it was pretty close to what you used to see on You Can't Do That on Television, but slightly um more viscous than that chunky heavy chunk stuff you would see on You Can't Do That on Television.
what was it made out of? I mean, yes, you can find videos of Mark Summers
Sure.
talking about what the Double Dare version was, but there's so
Right.
many different variations. What was that one?
The Slime Time Live version that we used for, oh God, whatever, 900 episodes or 3.5 years in Orlando from 2000 on was a special mix because we had these special cameras, these bullet cameras on the Slimulator that would shoot the slow motion video whenever somebody got the slime dropped on their head. The slow motion was the best, the spidering of the slime and everything. So we had a
Hmm.
special mix that was vanilla pudding, applesauce, um, basically cold water because we had to sometimes leave it in the slimulator for an hour out in the hot sun. So you didn't want it to get too weird. Um, and then methyl cellulose, which was the magic ingredient, which I know sounds horrible when you say methyl cellulose, but it's basically a food thickening agent that goes into like shakes and milkshakes and things like that. It was totally safe. And so that would go in, and when the slime would hit somebody, it would spider out and create this amazing effect. So the shabuzi would work really well with that, and the slimulator would work really well, and it was awesome. I loved it. I really did.
So you mentioned I gotta something we've always wondered as far as hosts go,
Sure.
because we talked about Phil Moore,
Yep.
Mike O'Malley.
Sure.
Did have the two of them ever been together? And then if so, what was that energy like?
Absolutely. So I don't know if you had to be a fan back then to know about the Nick Live tour. Did anybody ever hear of the Nick Live tour? Okay.
Yes.
Heard of it, yeah.
Didn't get to
So
see it, but yes.
Yes.
okay, that's great. And that's where Phil and Mike got together really to host something together. That was a tour that went, I don't know how many cities around the country that I did the opening video for. And when I tell you that was a labor of like love, it was like a 6 week almost hell to build that. Um, but that's not the story. The story is like those two guys got along so well, and Mike at that point was so jazzed up and didn't really know what he was going to go into next. I mean, I don't, he's become quite the amazing dramatic actor, but
Mhm.
at that point, I don't know what Mike was going to do next, but I feel like Phil's always going to be a game show host. So
Yes.
so they were a terrific combo. I remember seeing the show a couple times and they just had a ball and they made messes and ran around stage and it was at that point one of our newest and probably one of the only Nick stage shows at that time.
No kidding.
Great.
And then there was also the Nickelodeon Sports Challenge that also had Mike and Phil and there was one other game show host.
I don't know if I remember
I
that
know
one.
Robin helped out from Double
Okay,
Dare also.
sure.
I
Wasn't anyone from Wild and Crazy Kids, was it?
maybe I don't think so. I'll have to look it up.
I
But I
didn't know
know that
about
they
that
were
either.
together at least. Well, they shared co-hosting duties for that.
Okay, okay,
Um, Slime Time Live.
sure.
Uh, Before, because we were talking about the first iteration of it, were you part of the creation of that, or did you take what was already developed and make it into the show that you had?
Correct. So the first iteration was 91. Niels Sherman's, who I don't know if you've ever heard the name before, but
Mhm.
Niels has been around for a long time, and he was the guy that created Slime Time Live for literally just for a promotional, um, kind of like a game show in between the shows.
Mm.
Okay.
It was very small the first couple times. It was a week or two stunt that we used to do, and I was the person that would call the contestants and get them prepped so they could go live on the air on the phone. And so that was my job for the first like 90, 91, or never, 91, 92, 93. And then I took over when Niels left, and I did it in 94, 95. We had Phil host one of those. We had a guy named Rick something. I forget his last name. Oh my God, he's going to kill me. Rick Adams. He hosted 95, and then we didn't do Slime Time for about 4 years, and it came back in 2000. So I was part of the 94, 95 team that did it live for, again, like a week or two. We would go live on every night at like 8 o'clock or something. So much different. Virtual slime, things like that. The one in
Yes.
2000 was a little different, was
Right.
more real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how did you go from working on the promos and all those different the shorts and things like that, and then move on to heading up Slime Time Live?
That was absolutely the the case of being in the right place at the right time. I was the only on-air producer at Nick Studios that was dedicated to promos. So anything that came promo wise would come down and I would take it over. So they needed Slime Time to keep going. Niels wasn't around. I took it over. It was the best scenario ever because anything that would come down, I would get first shot at, unless it was like huge. And then, like there was a space shuttle special at one point that they were talking to some people in the space shuttle. That wasn't on me. But anything that kind of came down to the studios to be shot and it was a promo-ish thing was always me. And it was perfect. So
Oh man.
if I didn't know what I was doing at the start, I knew by the end of the job. I mean, I just kept getting things that I had to learn as I was on the job.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Were you aware of the I guess the voice actor or the voice announcer that did all the Nick promos? He had that really distinct voice. Like, did you ever meet him to direct things for him or
So there were two that or three that I dealt with fairly often. The one you might be talking about was Wendell Craig. Do you know who Wendell Craig was?
I'm not sure about the name,
Okay.
that's the thing.
Okay. There were three. Bill St. James is number one. He did a ton of stuff for Nickelodeon. Wendell Craig, we used to call him Windy, was the voice you probably remember from every Nick promo you ever saw in the 90s. Windy did,
Probably, yeah. It's like
yeah,
next on Nick. That
yes,
guy. Yeah.
yes. And then there was Joe Piazek or Joe from Chicago, who used to do what's called the VOCs, voiceover credits. So back in the day when credits went full and there was
Mhm.
no credit crunch or anything,
Hmm.
Joe from Chicago would come on and go, "Hey kids, time for, Rocco's Modern Life coming
Yeah.
up next."
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So
Great.
that was Joe
Man.
from Chicago. Yeah, Joe from Chicago. Oddly enough, my college professor at Quinnipiac University. Never crossed, but yes. Yeah. Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I have
I've always wanted to know who those were. That's a great
Yeah.
yeah,
question, Manny.
yeah, it
I was
really
so
is.
curious because, yeah, it's like you
Put a
said you work
name
with the
to the
promos.
voice.
Did you
Uh,
work with them? Like, all right, this is how you have to do it.
Oh
So,
yeah. I mean,
wow.
we'd sit in sessions with Wendy and he would do, he would smoke a cigarette and then go in and you know,
Ah,
coming up next on Welcome Freshman, that whole thing.
Gives it a smooth voice. You gotta smoke
Yes.
before.
There you
there
go.
was no issues like with Orson Welles, was there?
No, no, nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Jordy, you had something you were going to ask.
Yeah, so I have a couple questions. One
Okay.
was holidays. I'm a big holidays guy, especially on the networks. Holiday promos. What did you ever like have any like favorites or any standouts that you had when you were working on them that we might know?
It's I got to think about it because it was like 27 years was my total time there,
Hmm.
which feels like a lifetime for
Right, right.
it would be for a 27-year-old. But I don't know beyond like New Year's Eve specials that we did a couple
Okay.
of.
Mm.
um Christmas or holiday stuff. I mean, I did a bunch of Nick or Treats.
Yes. Oh, we
Ah.
love Nick or Treat
That's
here.
Yeah.
Jordy's favorite right there.
Okay.
Oh, well, there you go.
Did a bunch of those, answer the phone and call, and I
Yes.
actually was the person who would call occasionally. I mean, I worked with Amy Friedman and a bunch of folks on all those Nick or Treat promotions. And then I did the one that you may be familiar with where the thing would go down the haunted street and then there was
Yes.
the door, the Fred Newman hosted thing, which was
Yes. Oh
Yes.
Yes.
my gosh. Yes.
crazy nutty. And the amount of, if you know anything about computer animation at that
Oh
point,
yes.
those renders would render for days. This is
Oh
back
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh
Jordy
yeah.
can tell you too.
Yeah, I
okay.
do the 3D stuff for here at Splat Attack. When you
Oh,
see the episode, you'll see some of the stuff I do. Take a lot of
okay.
inspiration from the
Yeah.
work of Nickelodeon's 3D.
Mm.
So, what were you guys working in at the time? What program? Do you remember?
We were using what's called a silicon graphics machine,
Yes.
SGI, right? Which at that point was like the cutting edge technology.
Yep. Yep.
And here's where it went wrong. And I'll tell you the funny story. We couldn't, the playback, the files were so heavy, we couldn't play them back live. So what we had to do is we bought six different, at that point, which was cutting edge technology, laser disc machines.
Oh gosh. Yes, I got
Oh.
And
one back
we
here behind me.
recorded the house runs on the Laserdisc machines. And then when the kid would say, house number 3, we would trigger that Laserdisc machine and we would do a
Oh,
nice
no.
little fade because every house run had the
Mm.
same starting frame. visually, so you could transition really quick with the switcher,
Yep.
go to house 3, and they would get down the thing, and then we had this prize behind the door, which was keyable. It's a whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I love knowing the insides of it. I watch it and I try to break it down in my head, but just,
Oh,
hearing the details, I love it. I
it
love
was
it.
so much fun. And we, at that point, it was like the newest thing we were ever doing. It was the coolest thing ever. And we were
Right, right. Cutting
excited.
edge.
Yeah.
Silicon graphics.
Yeah.
Especially doing it live too. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
the
Yeah.
anxiety there.
Yeah.
Don't have any
The
of the
amount,
laser disc players fail.
And
the amount of
Oh
coordination.
gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where those laser discs now. Who knows? They're probably
Oh my
gone.
gosh.
But,
Ultimate collectible piece there.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, that would be a holiday thing that I worked on. There you go.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
cool.
Well,
The
thank you for
holiday thing.
sharing.
Yeah.
Of course, of course.
Okay, so Slime Time Live. That's the big one that a lot of
Mhm.
late '90s, early 2000s kids are going to remember,
Sure.
and we focus mostly on '90s. So it's rare that we get to branch out into the 2000s. So this is kind of a special opportunity for us. What was because you had to find all new hosts for Slime Time Live.
We did.
What was that process like?
When I was given the assignment to create Slime Time, I was back in New York from 96 to 2000. I feel like I'm telling my life story here. I
I
guess I sort of am. So from 96 to 2000, I was still the on-air promos guy, but I came back to New York. And so in New York, I'm going to say it was around July of 1999, Niels came to me and said, we want to do another Slime Time Live. We want to do it live. And we might want to do it like, for like 6 weeks, a big promotional thing. We're going to do it at the studios. Want you to do it. Great. So we went down and we tested a whole bunch of different things. And if anybody remembers the old Slime Time Live, I'm guessing some of you do.
Mhm.
It was a lot about shooting people in squares, almost like this Zoom call is set up, where we're all in boxes, right? And one of the things I fought really hard for was not to have any boxes anymore. I wanted whoever hosted Slime Time to be able to move around and jump around and do Dutch angles with the camera and go up,
Yes.
you know. And so we looked for hosts, I would say from maybe August through November of 99. Dave Azer was always in the mix because he was already hosting Nickelodeon Gas, which was the Games and Sports Network in Orlando. And Dave was full time. He was great. He knew what he was doing, but he was also very busy with them. And I don't remember, sadly, at this point in my time, who else we looked at, but I think we probably interviewed 15, 20 people to do Dave's job. And at the end of the day, Niels just said it's got to be Dave. Like, he's there, he's great, he can do it, and you'll get him at 3 o'clock every day. And you guys go live at 4, and that'll be fine. Like, how hard can it be? And then we figured out we needed a card guy to give the cards. Then we figured out we needed a girl to do other things. And then Dave, Jessica, and Jonah were born, and they were a natural trio, and it worked out perfectly. So, yeah, it was great.
How many of those did you film in a day?
I mean, we were live every day, so we would go 5 days a week. Generally, Slime Time the story, if you will, is we would go during the school year. So we'd go September to December, and then January through just about May, and then take off the summer. And Slime Time Live started out as a 1 hour a day thing. We would do 8 segments in between the shows. And then within 2 weeks, we got renewed we were supposed to do a 2 week stunt. We got renewed for 4 months, and they were like, keep going, just keep going. And we were like, great.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks after that, they said, we'd like you to make it not just an hour, but 2.5 hours a day, which was really hard. We went from 8 segments to 26 segments in a day.
Oh, wow.
And so
Wow.
in order to do that, we had to create a much different gaming system. And that's when Slime Time became a little bit more like Double Dare at times, where we were doing games outside or finding the fish in the pool and all sorts of crazy different things. So it went from just a simple Slimulator, pick the square game, to this full-on, tons of different games being created and lots of slime. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of gallons all the time. And it was, and the booty blasters and the shaboozanators and all that kind of crazy stuff. So yeah. Yeah.
And you set a world record at the time, right?
We did. We tried for the world pie record, which apparently we didn't apply for correctly, but we did pie about 10,000 people in one shot. That That's an episode probably in like 2001 or so. But then in '03, we went back and applied properly, and we got the Guinness World Record Award, which it's here somewhere around. I don't even know where. It's
Well,
still, I have it.
congratulations, that's
Oh,
great.
Yeah.
thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
780, I forget the exact number, 700 and somebody people simultaneously slimed, which was,
Oh, that would have been so cool.
thank
Simultaneously.
you. Thank you. Yes.
Simultaneously.
Now,
That was fun.
what were some of the unique challenges that you had for doing Slime Time Live?
Well, I mean, it was a live show, so that was number one. There was we had a delay, thank God, in case something went wrong or somebody, cursed or something, which rarely ever
Mm.
happened. You would have kids freeze up on camera who were nervous. We had, phone systems that would go down if a kid was calling in. Suddenly you wouldn't have a player on the phone. That's always tough when you're playing a two-person game live on the air.
Yeah.
Those types of things would happen, technical difficulties. The hardest thing I think was just to expand it from an hour to 2.5 and then create an arc where people playing in game one would eventually find their way to the last game, the super sloppy slime off, or what became the big shabuzi at the end of the day every day. And so you had to create this thing where if somebody wanted to watch for 2.5 hours, they would actually be able to follow along and say, oh, Jimmy from Wisconsin made it all the way to the end, and now he's going to get the big prize. That's what we were fighting to do, was to make
Yeah.
it make sense, you know? I don't know how many kids watch 2.5 hours every day, but I guarantee it's
A
some of
lot
them.
of us.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that is a minimum requirement for 90s and 2000s children to watch television,
There you go.
or at the
Yep.
very least have it on while we did something else. I
Yeah.
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
we
Absolutely.
lived off the TV.
Yeah.
Well, it shows how creative you guys are to especially to create an arc to reach that much, especially when it's like you're doing a live game show at the same time. So I'm
We
sure that
felt
was you were constantly thinking on your feet, probably.
Yeah. We felt a tremendous responsibility to the audience. We really did. I mean, we felt like we were kids ourselves in there. And so we tried to make the show that we would want to watch, or the show that we would want to be on. I mean, everything was like, would I want to do that? Yes, of course I want to
Yeah.
pedal this bike until the slime dumps on my head. I mean, all these things we wanted to do were just so much fun.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why I think we still get together 25 years later. The whole crew is just it was such a amazing experience to be having fun every day on your job. Yeah.
Tremendous.
So
That's the dream.
Yeah.
obviously there was things that had transpired between Slime Time Live and the 25th anniversary, but since we're talking about that, what happened with that?
We try to get together let me see. I'm trying to kind of count back. We did the first one on the 15-year mark. So we've had three of these reunions so far. We go every 5 years.
Okay.
First one was at the Nick Hotel in Orlando before it closed.
Mm.
The second one we did at a nightclub in Orlando. I don't know, we just found a space that we did it in. And then the last one we did at Universal, and we all were able to walk over and then tour the old sound stages. So it's just a 5-year get together. Dave, Jessica, and Jonah try to make it out every time. Jess couldn't make it this time. The LA wildfires are keeping her busy with the
Right.
news. I mean, she's a superstar out in LA. So it's kind of amazing that she went from being an intern with the finance department when we brought her in to becoming like LA's #1 newscaster. It's unbelievable. So Jess has done really well. And so it's just a great way to get everybody together who remembers all the great times on Slime
Yeah.
Time. Yeah. You know.
Is it just you guys getting together just to reminisce, or do you do something while you're all together?
I mean, we don't nobody slimes each other, thankfully. But no, I think it's just reminiscing. We all have a couple of drinks and dinner, and we all just, sometimes someone will throw an old rap tape up. There were a lot of rap tapes back in the day, and you get to see some of the old video of, behind the scenes stuff going on, and we get to tell a few war stories. And people were there for the Bahamas trip. We took Slime Time to the Bahamas for a week. We took Slime Time on the road for Nick Takes Over Your School for different times. We were in, Arizona and New Jersey and all these different places where this show went on the road. So there's plenty of war stories from all the different times we were doing it.
Now, you just mentioned the rap tapes.
Yeah.
So, did you have to deal with Karen Powell, who would
Yes.
edit everything, literally edit every Nickelodeon show? So she would edit the promos as well, right?
Correct. Karen Powell, Tom Heckbert were two of the editors that were down there. Rick Fernandez was the early one, then Karen and Tom. They were the staff editors at Nick Studios, and so they would edit everything. Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
Have
love the
you
rap tapes; they're great.
Oh, they're amazing. I mean, yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And I wish I had them all. Everything was on VHS back then. It's all gone. I feel bad.
Mm.
A lot of it's gone, sadly.
There's some on archive.org.
Okay.
Look up Nickelodeon rap tapes. They're there.
I'm gonna,
Some are
Yeah.
there.
okay. Got it.
now? Have you all kicked around the idea, even just playfully, like this will never happen, but what if we
Right.
were to bring back Slime Time Live? If we were able to do this, would we want to do it? Could we do it?
I mean, beyond the legal ramifications of trying to wrestle something away from Paramount, it's owned by Nickelodeon,
Yeah.
certainly. You know, would they ever go back and do another version of it? I mean, they seem to be content with their Super Bowl stuff and the Slime
Hmm.
Time Super Bowl
Yeah.
stuff, and you know, I took Dave went to the Super Bowl with me. We've done a bunch of different things with the Super Bowl. We did a special in 2004 for Super Bowl, where we slimed a bunch of people. Michael O'Malley was there.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, they certainly should. I mean, in a world today where everything is short form video on your
Mhm.
phone and Instagram and TikTok and everything else, we were doing the original
Short
short
form
form
content.
Yeah.
video,
Yeah.
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 right? So we were there first. So I would love it if they brought it back. I mean, that would be a great thing to do. Yeah.
I'd love to see it again.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like interactive TV before it was a thing, so it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we were onto something pretty early, which felt pretty good, and the audience seemed to respond. I mean, do you guys know that we launched? We were Slime Time Live was supposed to be when it launched January 24th, 2000, the supporting show to boost up the launch of Double Dare 2000.
Oh,
Was
really?
it?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we were there literally to boost Double Dare 2000, which at that point was hosted by Jason Harris, the new host that Mark sort of handed it off to. And for whatever reason, and I will never fully understand it, we went for 3.5 years and Double Dare 2000 was gone in 8 weeks. And why it didn't take, I don't know. But
I can tell you why I didn't take.
I thought it was all right.
Mm.
Yeah.
wow, okay.
I can tell you exactly why Double Dare without Mark Summers is not Double Dare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could very well be. You're right. Yeah.
Mm.
It's just not, it just doesn't feel right. Yeah,
He
especially
brings
to
so
us
much
kids.
to
It's like
it.
it doesn't
Yeah.
feel right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if Slime Time Live, that's carrying on what Double Dare has started, but it's its own thing.
Yeah.
It's easy, especially for us who grew up watching it, to see why we latched onto Slime Time Live, because it's very much in that the successor of that. And I don't know, Double Dare just didn't feel right. Double Dare 2000 didn't feel right. Like it's good, but it's
Sure.
not the same.
It
But
Right.
this
isn't.
new thing, this is super cool. I want to watch more of this. So does not surprise me.
Happy to hear it. Yeah. There you go.
Uh, so you went from working at Nickelodeon,
Yep.
spending many years there,
Yep.
and you're now, for those who don't know, where are you working now?
So in 2023, or what year are we in now? 2023, I accepted a position over at Sesame Workshop um to work my last job at Nickelodeon from 2009 to 18 was the head of international. I was a creative director for all of international. So I would travel
Wow.
and check on all the Nickelodeons around the world. And
Yeah.
I accepted a role in 2023 at Sesame, basically doing the exact same job for Sesame Street. So um, happy to say I'm back in kids TV again, which makes me feel really good.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So what do you do now
Amazing.
for Sesame?
So I oversee all the international brand. Anytime we're doing Sesame around the world, and we're in multiple countries. Obviously, Cookie Monster feels like he's everywhere. And Elmo, if you can't imagine. So We have shows in South Africa, we have shows in India and Bangladesh and Latin America. And so I deal with all the creative directors in those regions to make sure that the brand is staying consistent, that we're taking care of our Muppets wherever they are. And I'm happy to say I have not been slimed in that time there. So in good shape.
Oh,
That'd
that's
be cool if
awesome.
Big Bird can come up behind you and just pour
Yeah,
slime on the back.
he would have the height to do it. He would.
Now, the international. So
Yes.
I just thought of something because we just found something. Like we were shown something that we've never seen before.
Okay.
We have a segment called Collector's Corner,
Okay.
and we'll have different collectors, mostly Nickelodeon right now, but sometimes others, and just show us all these wonderful things that they've collected. Sometimes they're all things that you could buy at the store. Some things are things that you couldn't buy. Like someone
Right.
had a set piece that was at Nickelodeon Studios, like one of the little stand-up figures and things like
Sure.
that. Someone had, his name was Ryan. He had this clock, but it had three different time zones. And he said he got this from Australia.
Okay.
Have you, because you dealt with internet, did you ever go like
Oh,
in
yeah.
person to some of these places?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I probably went to each one of our markets at least twice. I was in Australia twice for sure. Kirsty Fallon and Mick Elliott were the heads of creative at Nick Australia, which was a great place to work. We actually brought Slime Time to India. It was called,
Wow.
it's called Gilly Gilly Gappa.
Oh
And
wow.
Ah, I
yeah,
like
so
that.
Slime Time has made it way around the globe. But I don't doubt for a moment that they sold some sort of prop or thing like that in Australia that had three different time zones on it. I'm sure that's probably the case.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to show this to you to see if
Okay.
you might know what this is. I'm going to do a screen share
All right.
because we've never seen this before. It's in the bottom right corner, of course. Have you?
Oh,
Oh,
great shot
yeah.
of me there.
She's hungry. I'll
Yeah.
crop that out for you, Kat.
I've seen
No,
that
it's all right.
before.
Now, was that something that served a purpose, like within the studio, or was that just a something that they sold in
I
Australia?
I don't remember what the purpose was of it, but it does feel like something I've definitely seen before. Yeah.
Wiley.
Yeah,
I
I'd
It,
imagine it's like for the office, like if you're gonna
that's what
call
I was thinking.
Australia, know what time
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
You would think that that'd be a gift for people who would working in international doing multiple time zones.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, a Christmas gift or something.
that's kind
Yeah.
of what I was thinking at well, because if they're an Australian, if they're already having to work with others and stay in
Right.
communication with the others around the globe,
Yeah.
this would help with that. At least
Yeah.
that was my initial thought.
Yeah.
Well,
That makes sense.
do you remember what the time zones were on there? Was it Australia, like New York, and
London, I
like
think.
was it London? Okay.
Mhm.
Early on, Australia was the first Nick International, and then the UK was the second. So it would make
Mm.
sense that at one point, if it was New York, UK, and Australia, that those were the three that really
Mm.
kicked off Nick International.
And that
Yeah,
was in
Really?
early 2000s, like 2003, 2004, I think is what he said.
that seems to make sense. Niels, my boss in Orlando, went to launch Nick Australia. Boy, it felt earlier than that, but I don't know the exact dates, but it was around that time. Yeah,
So,
great.
so do you have any major projects or anything that you've got going on right now that you'd like to share?
I mean, honestly, we're just trying to keep everybody going. There's so much. There's a fairly big struggle in kids media these days to get new shows out there, and cable's not what it used to be. Everybody knows
Yeah.
Yeah.
that here, and streaming is everything these days, and YouTube seems to be the number one of everything these days. So
Mm.
I think it's a challenging time for kids to find good content. And it's not the same as it used to be from what all of us remember.
Yeah.
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 So I think it's just keeping Sesame Street relevant in a time when it's a 55-year-old property, which, you know, you can probably name on one hand the number of shows that have made it for 55 years at this
Right,
point,
right.
right? So it's a challenge just to keep it relevant and to keep Elmo and Cookie Monster and Grover in the forefront of kids media when there's so much else out there and so many other choices. So that I think is my mission these days is to try to make the show, make the brand feel relevant to today's audience.
You gotta send a Muppet to space.
Sure.
Again, it's already happened.
Yeah,
Pigs
no,
in.
pigs in
That's
space.
true. Pigs in space.
I am really happy at the fact that my youngest, who is 5, these past few nights in a row, every night at bedtime, he's wanted me to read him a bedtime story, and they've all been Grover stories.
Oh,
Aw.
And they're old. Like they were
sure.
like they were Grover at the big Everything in the Whole Wide World Museum,
Yeah.
and a Hide and Seek, and then of course Monster at the end of this book.
Classic.
And now they have apps where they're
Oh yeah.
reading these stories to the kids. And then we were watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade and said, "Hey, look, there's Sesame Street, there's the Muppets." And he like got so excited, like he didn't care. Like there was a Wednesday float.
Right.
My oldest loves Wednesday, so I was like, "Hey, look, it's Wednesday." And Jensen was like, "I don't care." And look, it's Sesame Street, it's Elmo. I got so excited.
It still works. I'm happy
Still
to.
works,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
You'd still love it.
Yeah. No, listen, I think I reminisce about my Nick years, and I will continue to do so because it was a very special time in my life and a very, very exciting time for kids media. Like that time period we're talking about now, the 90s, was just everybody was just making stuff for fun and having such a good time doing it. But as I progress in my career, to have something as important and as vital as Sesame Street to hang my hat on feels really great. So I'm happy either way, and I'm very blessed to have had the career I've had.
Absolutely.
Does anybody else have any final questions before we hang the episode up?
Well, I have one last one. It feels appropriate to ask it at the end, but
All right.
there was the famous Nickelodeon end card where they'd have like it would be sometimes a pile of hay, sometimes it'd be like a blimp.
Yep.
Did you work on, or do you know who worked on? Have any connection back to them? I'm very interested to know.
So there were ones that were not Nick Studios based. You're talking about shows that were done outside of Nick Studios, basically, because that was a different end card
Mhm.
of Nick Studios, right?
Right.
Um, I don't know because I wasn't in show production. I was the promo guy at that point. If
Mhm.
I ever worked on those end cards, they would sometimes put a little soundbite underneath them that was kind of funny from the episode or a voice,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
I remember, part of the struggle we had with the logo for many years that I don't know if anybody knows, but like the fact that the logo could be anything
Yeah.
Yeah.
was actually a legal issue that happened later for Nickelodeon where the ownership of the logo was tough to prove. So
Oh.
Wow.
yeah, so the flexibility of that logo on those end cards always being something different was amazing because Nick could be anything.
Yeah.
Ended up being a legal issue later, but it's a whole different episode.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, for me, when I see the Nick Studios end card, which is rare, you see it on YouTube, I guess sometimes, that will
Mhm.
always bring a smile to my face.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thanks for sharing. I mean, that's now we know what happened to those.
there you go. There you go.
Well, Rich, if there's anybody who wants to follow you and see more of your adventures, where can they follow you at?
I'm on Instagram at Rich Barry Creative. That's kind of my thing, and we have a Facebook group that's kind of a little bit private, I guess you would say, for Nick Studios employees called The Orange Life, which is on Facebook. But I mean, I think true fans can probably jump on there if they want to. I'm sure we're going to get a million invites now. But yeah, Instagram is Rich Barry Creative, and that's kind of where I show what I'm working on these days.
Awesome.
So
Well, Rich, thank you again for jumping in and joining us for
Yes,
this
thank
episode.
Thank
you.
It
you.
was
Yeah.
my pleasure.
I always have
Seriously,
such a
this is
blast
great.
talking with you.
Good. Happy to do it anytime. Thank you for having me.
All right. Until the next episode, all of you Slimesters, we'll splat you later.
Bye later.
This episode was recorded at Splat Attack Studios in virtual home studios, though none in Florida.